Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today we're going to look at the studio discography of that little band from Boston called Boston. Okay? Band that's been around now for, 44 years, right? And have only released 6 studio albums. All right? So a band that's been famous for not only that fantastic debut album, which sold, 17 million copies plus, and is generally regarded as one of the finest debuts in modern rock history, but also a band that would go 10, 15, 20 years between studio releases, obviously. I will say their discography is an interesting one. The not-so-good albums are, not so good. Very, very spotty. Those couple that they released at the beginning, pretty tremendous. I know most of you are probably saying, well, Pete, should be a pretty easy show to do because you just basically list them as they came out. And that's probably not too far from reality. I'm going to give a slight little twist on that, I think. But for the most part, their best stuff was their early stuff. Tom Schultz and company, and in some cases, a lot of company on their more recent albums, redoing older tracks and a lot of different songwriters and a million different players. It's not so much a band anymore. It's just all right, how many more years and how many is Tom Schultz going to take to put out a new record? How many older songs is he going to do version 2 of? How many, tens of hundreds of people are going to participate in the recording and in the writing and all that sort of stuff. So it's almost like it's not really a band anymore. However, even on the more recent stuff, their last couple albums, you got some strong tracks here and there, but a lot of not really strong tracks at all. So I'm going to rank them in the order that I prefer them. The bottom couple, not very good. All right. I have them anyway because I just love the band. And like I said, each one is noteworthy for at least a couple of traditional sounding Boston tracks. All right. Housed within some not so good stuff. I'm going to be nice today, though. So coming in at the bottom at number 6, and this is where I might throw a couple of you off because you're probably thinking I'm going to mention something else, but I'm going to go with 2002's Corporate America. Yeah, I find this a very messy album. The one that came after it's pretty messy, too. They're both pretty messy. I think all the other ones have a lot, going for them. These two, unfortunately, not a lot going for them, unfortunately. So like I said, this came out in 2002, did not do well, here in this country, in America especially, just so many. I mean, you got Tom obviously playing most of the instruments on the album, guitar, bass, keyboards, drums, even does some vocals on here as well. You got Brad Delp. Okay, this is actually, prior to Brad passing away. And he sings on a handful of tracks on here. You got Fran Cosmo also singing on some songs on here. Of course, Fran replaced Brad in Boston based on his stints with Barry Goodrow and Orion the Hunter, right? It's kind of a logical choice, right? But of course, Brad came back shortly thereafter and helped out with the tour for that album that he came out. We're going to talk more about that in a bit. You got female vocals showing up on here, Beth Cohen. You got a guy named Charlie Farron also singing on here. You got Gary Pill, the loyal Gary Pill, playing guitar and keyboards. All right, been kind of a mainstay in the band for a long time. You got Anthony Cosmo also doing some singing and guitar playing. Kimberly Dami on vocals as well. A lot of female vocals here. David Sykes on some bass, Curly Smith on drums, and a whole host of other people helping out with things here and there. So, what about the album, you might ask? Well, there's a couple good tracks. I think I Had a Good Time. The kickoff track is a fun, fairly Bostonish sounding song. It's catchy. It's got those familiar Schultz riffs. It's written by Schultz. So, it's probably one of the better songs on here. You got Stare Out Your Window. Not very Boston sounding. That's written by Anthony Cosmo. Corporate America, the title track, written by Tom. That, again, this is, early 2000s, so it's got kind of like a weird little kind of industrial feel to it. But on the chorus, it's got the big guitars and that, those Brad Delp vocals, it sounds like Boston, right? With You, not a big fan of that. Someone I actually like. That's another song written by Schultz, but I like it better on the follow-up record because, of course, they redid a couple of these songs. Not a bad song, though. Kind of reminds me of an old James Gang song. It's got the kind of Hammond organ thing going on. Not a bad song. Then you got Turn It Off, Crying. Not big on those. Kind of poppy. Didn't Mean to Fall in Love is actually a pretty good song. Again, I like the follow-up album's rendition of that a little bit better. You Gave Up on Love, not a bad tune, kind of hippy drippy, whatever. So I don't know. And then they tossed in a live version of Living for You, which of course is a song from an earlier album. So all in all, not a big fan of this album. Like I said, couple of decent tracks, but it's not really Boston to me. And that can be said for this one too. From 2013, Life, Love, and Hope. Frontiers Records made a big deal about this when it came out. They're pretty psyched. We got Boston on the label. A huge band from the 70s and the 80s. But this kind of like came and went pretty damn quickly. But they did commercial spots for this and everything. And I remember the first song you would hear in that the trailer, the commercial was Heaven on Earth, kickoff track, which is actually a damn good song and probably the best Boston song they had done in years. It sounds like classic Boston. After that, they got Didn't Mean to Fall in Love. Again, a remake from the album before it. I think it's more successful on here. I think it's a little crunchier. The Hammond organ's a little more pronounced. I kind of dig it. Last Day of School is actually a really interesting instrumental. So to me, kind of sounds like Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell, or Bat Out of Hell 2 stuff mixed with a little Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Cool piano and guitars and organs and things like that. Pretty cool, right? Sail Away, it's okay, right? Nice little kind of power ballad type of thing. Then you got Life, Love, and Hope, the title track, not too bad. If You Were in Love, bleh. Someday is okay. Love Got Away is okay. Someone, again, another remake from the album before it, I think is much better on here. It's actually kind of rocking. All right, it's really catchy. I dig that. Then you got You Gave Up on Love 2.0, also another remake from the album before it. I think a little more successful here. And then The Way You Look Tonight, which kind of bland. So on here, you've got Brad Delp, even though he's been gone for quite a long time, his vocals are on a good chunk of this album. Okay, posthumous, of course. So kind of creepy that Tom did that, but I guess it was okay with Brad's family. And got to say, it's good to hear his vocals on here because he's one of the most unique and best singers of all time, right? You got Gary Pill also on guitar and vocals. Kimberly Dami also showing up here. She's playing bass, vocals, and flute. She actually toured with the band as well as Tommy DiCarlo on vocals. It's amazing how Tom has gotten like 3 vocalists in the band now to replace Brad. All right, to kind of give that full sound that we got from those early Boston albums. And I saw them on this tour, and you know what? It was a lot of fun. All right, who else you got here? Curly Smith on harmonica, David Victor also on vocals, Louis St. August on vocals, Jeff Neal on vocals, a bunch of other people on vocals to help out here. So it's a very vocal-rich album. But again, it's like a handful of remade songs from the previous album, a couple of the good newer tracks, just kind of a messy album. All right, just kind of a messy album. Next up, we're going to go with Walk On from 1994. Again, been 8 years since the previous album, Third Stage. A long time. But this album did fairly well for them. Considering that in the early 90s, people were still buying records or CDs, right? So did fairly well here in this country anyway. So, of course, this is the first album without Brad Delp at all. He co-wrote a couple of tracks, but he did not appear on it at all. So you got Frank Cosmo, like I mentioned, from Orion the Hunter and Barry Goudreau's solo band. In on lead vocals, you got Gary Pill, of course, on guitar. You got Tom playing just about everything. All right, you got David Sykes on bass, Doug Hoffman on drums, and then a handful of other people, Tommy Funderbunk and Sean Olson and Bob Cedro, Matt Bela, all sorts of other people filling in, all right, on the album. But, it's actually not a bad album, and there are chunks of the album that sound like vintage Boston. So, it kicks off with I Need Your Love, pretty catchy tune. Surrender to Me's got some great crunchy, almost heavy metal guitars going on here. Living for You, not a bad kind of popish song. My problem with this album is that there are parts of the album that kind of sound like a souped up Survivor album. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't really sound like a Boston album. However, the Walk On medley in the middle of the album sounds like classic Boston. That kicks ass. So you got, Walking at Night. You got the title track Walk On, which absolutely kills. You got the Get Organized, which is amazing. Hammond organ from Tom awesome, and then the Walk On some more to kind of finish it off. So, roughly, 10, 12 minutes of vintage sounding Boston broken up into 4 parts. Best part of the album. And then you got What's Your Name to finish it all off. That's okay. Magdalene, pretty good. And then We Can Make It to finish out the album, which I think is a pretty catchy tune. It's got a cool Boston sound to it. Not a bad album. All right. Different, yes, but not a bad album. Boston moving into the 90s. We know how all, the commercial hard rock and metal kind of fading out, grunge and alternative coming in, and here you got an album that probably was 5-6 years a little too late. I think if they would have released this album in 1988, 89, different story, right? All right, so we're going back to Third Stage, their third album from 1986. Pretty good album, I think. I think this album holds up well. This sold 4 times platinum here in the States. A lot more worldwide. So, of course, this is, Tom and Brad, basically, the Tom and Brad show, with help from Jim Masdy on drums. Sib Hashian also appears a little bit on drums. Gary Pill also appears on guitar on one track. This is Gary's first appearance with the band. So, some good songs on here. Personally, some of my favorites, Amanda was the kind of hit single here. We're Ready. Good up-tempo rocker. Then there's The Launch, cool little instrumental. Cool the Engines. That's the supercharged kind of smoking song from this album. Dig that a lot. My Destination is a cool kind of atmospheric melodic track. New World, more instrumental stuff. To Be a Man is fantastic. All right. I Think I Like It. Catchy up-tempo party rocker. All right. Can't You Say? Can't You Say is great. Can't You Say You Believe in Me? It's a good song. Still in Love. Holly Ann. Holly Ann is great. It's a great way to end this album. One of my favorites. And I like the kind of the chords, the guitar chords going on Holly Ann. I'm just like sitting here thinking, it's swirling around in my head. And a great vocal from Brad Delp, I think. So, good album. I think it's a strong album, all right? The top 3 are all pretty good. Then, of course, Don't Look Back from 1978. Classic, another big seller. I think this, I looked at it as a disappointment compared to the debut, but it still sold 7 million copies. All right, this is the classic lineup here, of course. So you got, Tom and Brad and Barry Goodrow and Sib Hashian, right? However the hell he says his name. Fran Sheehan on bass, all right? So basically the original classic lineup of the band. Great tunes on here. Don't Look Back, the title track is amazing. The Journey, cool little instrumental, right? It's Easy. Taking it day by day. Great stuff. A Man I'll Never Be, my absolute favorite song of this album, and a top 5 Boston song for me. I love the power and the emotion of that song. It's so powerful at the end too. Just an unsung gem in their catalog, in my opinion. Feeling Satisfied, another fun tune. You got Party rocker. Used to Bad News, another catchy rocker, and the snarling hard rockin' Don't Be Afraid. Got some great dueling guitar work from Barry and Tom on that. Just, again, if it wasn't for the debut, most people would be talking about this all the time. But you know what? When it comes to classic albums, classic debuts, it's really hard to kind of forget about this absolute gem from 1976. Again, millions and millions and millions and millions of copies, the classic lineup of the band, More Than a Feeling. Timeless song, forever played on the radio. Peace of Mind, which I think is even a better song. That's an amazing, amazing track. So catchy. Really great guitar tones and guitar riffs on that. The vocals on this album are just off the charts outstanding. You got the lengthy 4-play instrumental coupled up with Long Time. Great kind of proggy, epic track from the band. You got Rock and Roll Band, another good party anthem. Smokin', obviously a great song. Gonna Hitch a Ride, right? Very cool kind of rock tune with a lot of pop feel to it, very catchy. Something About You, another snarling rocker from this album, and one of the underrated gems on the album. And then the mellow Let Me Take You Home Tonight, with its kind of breezy, melodies and what have you, and a very tasty guitar solo. Just a catchy album. One of those albums where probably most of the songs on here have been played to death on radio, but one of those albums that I can still put on any day, listen to it, and enjoy it. I mean, it's that good, man. Yeah, I've heard it a million times, but man, it's just still really good. So let's recap. Coming in at number 1, we're going to go with the self-titled debut. Number 2, Don't Look Back. Number 3, Third Stage. Number 4, Walk On. Number 5, Life, Love, and Hope. And number 6, Corporate America. Rank them as you like them. That's the name of the game on this channel, on this show. So curious to see how you rank the Boston albums. There are probably going to be some of you that are like, I only can tolerate the first 3. There may be some fans of those last couple. That's what I want to find out. So visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. So what's coming up, you might ask? Going to rank the studio albums by popular demand. Black Country Communion. Also, I've heard many of you, and it's going to happen probably in the next couple of days or a week or so. I'm going to rank the discography of Rival Sons, because, of course, we need to talk about some of these great new bands, too, right? All sorts of other stuff coming up. I'm going to rank the studio albums with Steve Keeler and Chris Allo this weekend. Metallica. Steve Keeler and I are also going to top 10 songs for Opeth. I'm going to try and get to rank the albums of Dio, the band Dio, Ronnie James Dio's great band. All coming up, we've also Vandegraaff Generator, Wishbone Ash. All right. All sorts of other stuff. All right. So you don't want to miss any of it. So tune in, make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.